A typical primary care physician sees a patient once a year on average. That's not a relationship. That's not enough time to really get to know them and do anything real. We see our customers on average 5 times a month. That is a real relationship. That's what health and wellness should be.
Welcome back to the Fitt Insider podcast. I'm your host, Joe Veneri. Today I'm joined by Jim Donnelly, CEO of Restore Hyperwellness. In this episode, we chat about Restore's health and wellness centers. Jim explains how the company defines hyperwellness and its relationship to healthcare. And we talk about how their recent $140 million funding round will fuel expansion. Let's get into it. Hi, Jim. Welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's really great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. Looking forward to the conversation today. And just to kick things off, can you introduce yourself and talk about Restore Hyperwellness?
Yeah, so I'm Jim Donnelly. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Restore Hyperwellness. Restore is sort of taking the country by storm. We're a preventative health and wellness offering. So think of traditional healthcare as a sick care model. A person comes in broken and they fix them. Think of us as a preventative model where we try to keep people from ever getting sick. We have a variety of modalities, cryotherapy, IV therapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, red light therapy, sauna therapy, blood test, a bunch of other things like that, all sort of built around this notion of hyper wellness, which is our sort of way that we keep people healthy.
Yeah, I definitely want to dig into that when you think about, what wellness is now and then your version, right? Hyper wellness and helping people improve kind of all aspects of their well-being. But maybe if we step back a little bit, the company from what I saw was founded in 2015, maybe earlier?
Yeah, late 2015. We were a real business in 2016.
Sure. And then you get going now, obviously you said taking the country by storm and really expanding. And we'll talk about all the ways that that's happening. But was it the vision always to, franchise and scale up and make this concept as big as it could be? Or was it like, hey, let's see if we can do this one time and then go from there? How did you go from that initial idea to maybe getting the ball rolling?
It was a little bit of both. In the beginning, it was a sort of a fortuitous thing. A buddy of mine and I were training for a triathlon. I was 46 at the time. I was pretty broken up. I went to pick my wife up for lunch and someone walked by and said, "Hey, I'm heading to cryo." And it kind of piqued my interest. I said, "What the heck's cryo? I'm sore. Let me go try it." So I went and tried cryotherapy. I felt better right away. I loved the modality, but I hated everything else about the experience. It was a crappy retail environment. It was way overpriced. I didn't like the staff, all these different kind of things. And so I called my buddy, who is now my business partner and the co-founder of Restore, and said, "Hey man, you got to go try this." And so long story short, after much prodding and multiple weeks, he finally went and tried it. And he said, "I got the same exact impression. I love cryo, makes me feel better, but I hate everything else about it." So we're kind of A/B testing kind of guys. We went and found a location. We made it look exactly opposite of the thing we'd experienced. And we said, let's see if we get some traction. And so we did immediately. And then we said, well, maybe that's a fluke. Maybe that's a function of Austin, Texas. So we did some A/B testing around different parts of Austin, put one in Charlotte, put a couple in Houston. And lo and behold, we had a concept that seemed to have real traction. And that's where we put it on a whole different trajectory. That's where, first of all, we wanted to make the business a real business, not just what I call a guy in sweatpant business. The thing about cryotherapy is anybody can open a cryotherapy studio. So we started to add defensive barriers. In our case, it was the medical side of the business, the medical infrastructure and those sorts of things. And so we made it more complex, but we also made it better for our consumer proposition. We put things in it that would really, truly move the bar for people. And the idea around hyper wellness was that wellness had a reputation of being relatively soft, being kind of touchy-feely, not necessarily science-based. And so we wanted to create a category that had an entirely different definition. So for us, hyper wellness, it has 9 components. And to be a component of hyper wellness, it has to, number one, make you feel better right away. It has to be supported by scientific and medical, studies. And then finally, it has to be democratizable. We did not want to create something that just worked for rich people and pro athletes. We really, really put a lot of effort in making sure that what we do is available to essentially most people in society.
Yeah, I think so many aspects of that, right? Really interesting. And I want to, maybe dig into more about the specific offerings and services, modalities, how you arrive at them. But one thing I was curious about, because if you think about the even something like jogging, right? There was a time where that was a weird hobby to have, and then weightlifting. It's like, what are we doing with weightlifting? Did you initially get pushback around whether it was cryotherapy or any of the other services? Were people reluctant, whether that's customers or friends or investors, or was everybody things were starting to move in the direction where this was becoming more kind of acceptable, and even people were starting to demand it?
Yeah, so I would definitely say the early adopters were completely sold from day one, and those were people that you would traditionally call biohackers. Like those guys were trying things, and that was easy for them. But the more interesting thing was we had this amazing funnel. Unfortunately, amazing is the wrong word. It's probably there's a negative thing to this funnel, and it's this notion that 70% of the U.S. population has a chronic condition. And so when we first opened this, we thought it was going to be athletes looking for recovery and performance. And that is a part of our business. It's about 18% of our business. But we thought it was going to be much bigger. The much bigger part of our business are these other people, the 80% that have a chronic condition and they're looking for a better solution. So when I mentioned the funnel earlier, these are people that have tried the traditional route. They've gone to a traditional medicine option. They've gone to their orthopedic doctor. They've been prescribed different things. They've tried everything that traditional medicine has to offer, and they've just not gotten the results they wanted. And so if you go the pharmaceutical route, there are some amazing pharmaceuticals that have done transformational things for humankind, but many of them also have long-term negative impacts and short-term side effects. So if you can find an option that is preventative, that works with chronic conditions, that doesn't have any negative side effects, that doesn't have any long-term negative impacts on your body, on your liver, on your kidneys, things like that, you're going to gravitate towards that. So what happened is people started coming in and they tell other people like them, hey, I've got fibromyalgia, I'm going to Restore. It is transformational for me. I have rheumatoid arthritis. It's transformational for me. And then on top of that, it was cool. And so if you're a 45-year-old person and you're going and doing cryo at negative 250 degrees, not only are you feeling better, but you're also kind of like, I'm smart. I'm doing something better. I'm doing something different. I'm doing something that's cool. And you're really eager to tell everybody about it. I say all the time, nobody goes and brags about their gynecologist, but everybody brags about enduring 250 degrees below zero because you're smart, you're strong, you're willing to endure something that makes you feel better.
Yeah, all those things. It's personally something that I'm very much drawn towards, and been an athlete all my life, and really obviously invested in my overall well-being, health, fitness. And there are times where I look at the trend of folks who have chronic issues or overweight or just generally aren't taking care of themselves, and think about the small steps, right? And simple things in terms of eating well and body weight exercise and physical activity that they could and should be doing. And then at the other end of the spectrum, obviously things like Restore, right? Or even different wellness modalities and practices, even like, paying $30 or $40 to go to a boutique fitness class or buy a Peloton. How do you think about, helping people navigate that journey, right? If they come in, and is it something that they should be seeking out, Restore to, change their habits and transform their health, or is this part of an overall, hey, if this is the first step that they're taking, that's fantastic. Let's get them to do that and then see how we can help them improve their overall well-being.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, there's no magic bullet. There's no one thing you do and then your health and wellness are transformed. I would approach this question in a couple ways. Number one, we think of 9 different attributes of hyperwellness. By the way, we don't sell all of them. So sleep, for instance, is a part of being hyperwell. Community and doing something that you love is a part of being hyperwell. But there are other things that we do sell: contrast therapy, heat and cold, IV therapy, other things like that. So when you put it all together, and you do them together in a consistent way, you get really, really great results. Now, having said that, it is a lot about small steps. So the little things that you do today over time are what create the big results later. And so the neat thing about what we do is we get you on this virtuous cycle. So the virtuous cycle is the better you feel, the more you do, the better you feel. That's the exact opposite of the typical cycle people are on. Right now, most people are on a negative feedback loop. They get a little older, they get a little more pain, so they stop doing something. And because they stop doing something, they get a little older, they get a little more pain. And so we want to take that negative feedback loop and we want to put them in a virtuous positive feedback loop. And once again, it's little steps. And so maybe it's someone that hasn't worked out in a while. Well, if you go work out and then you come and do cryotherapy, guess what? You're going to be a little less sore. Maybe it's someone that's trying to do more and they just don't have enough energy. So if you have the right micronutrients in your body, guess what? You're going to have more energy. So it's these little things and it's immediate. When you come into a restore, once again, our number one principle around hyper wellness is that you feel better. And if you're interacting with a business where you feel better, you'll give that business some grace and latitude to continue to offer you more and more. So we don't offer people like this massive transformation on day one. We say, come in and try it, feel a little better, and then keep trying it and feel better. And then you wake up and say, wow, I've been doing this for a little while. The results are transformational. Now let me go to the next level. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, when it comes to, you mentioned the different dimensions of hyper wellness and some of the services like cryotherapy. When you look at the different locations, is it consistent across the board? Like what's most popular? How do you decide what goes into each one? Are those ever evolving? And what, how do you kind of stay up to date in terms of like, oh, these are the new proven or trending or people are asking for services?
So number one, everybody's different. And so we do really try to figure out what's happening with an individual and put them on a different protocol. So some people are going to respond better to other things, or there's certain things. Some people are going to respond to other things. So we really do try to individualize it. And we're in a unique situation in that we have probably the deepest wellness and medical relationship in the country. So a typical primary care physician sees a patient once a year on average. That's not a relationship. That's not enough time to really get to know them and do anything real. We see our customers on average 5 times a month. That is a real relationship. So we see the nuances and the individuality so we can really get to the appropriate protocol that's going to help them. And we can adjust on the way. That's what health and wellness should be. That deeper relationship, having the time to do the right things, make adjustments and that sort of thing. Now, having said that, we have a lot to offer. When people come in, the 2 most common questions are always, what should I do and how often should I do it? And so we have to be able to answer that. So number one, we do have what we think are the right modalities for those questions, but we didn't just haphazardly pull those into a restore. So we have what we call restore labs. Restore labs is approached by literally everything in the world. If there's a modality out there, if there's an IV ingredient, if there's a process, we have probably talked to that company or someone in that category. We have a very detailed process around what gets into the lab, how we test it, how we commercialize it. And then ultimately, we have to figure out if it's going to work in all of our stores around the country. We have a philosophy that if it doesn't work in all, then it doesn't work in any. And then the final thing I'll add to that that's unique about Restore is Restore works everywhere. And so we get the same type of activity in our stores in Lubbock, Texas, as we do in New York City. as we do in Santa Monica, as we do in Miami, as we do in Wichita, as we do in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So I think we've been uniquely capable of making this work for every human being. It doesn't matter if you're in an urban environment, suburban environment, big city, smaller city, cold state, warm state. It doesn't matter. The same chronic conditions exist everywhere. It doesn't discriminate. And there are a ton of people that are looking for a better path forward. And we don't have this sort of over the top, well, we're in Austin, which is a cool city. All the cities are cool to us. And it kind of goes back to that comment I made earlier. We don't want to just do this for pro athletes and rich people. I get a ton of fulfillment out of those customers. We have the highest level athletes in the world. If I listed the names, you'd be like, holy crap, that's really super cool. And that is kind of sexy, but I get more gratification out of a school teacher or a firefighter being able to come in and deal with the fact that they're on their feet all the time. They're doing this really hard manual thing. And when they get hurt, they actually can't perform their job. So that is what I think it makes us super proud of our mission every day.
Yeah, and it also kind of proves, like you were saying, it transcends locations, demographics, I'm sure, the different kind of customer base and, who's willing to spend on this. I think there's, again, back to the jogging and kind of weightlifting comment, it was, people aren't going to pay for this. They're not interested in this. They don't understand, maybe sometimes even there's some, comments down that path, but this kind of proving that wrong and appealing to people beyond pro athletes, right, also changes the dynamics of the business. It makes that addressable market much, much larger.
Well, 100%. But I will say this: most of the things you do in a restore, you can replicate in nature. So, for instance, hydration. You can drink more water. But the reality of it is 80% of Americans walk around in a pretty significant dehydrated state. And there are reasons for that. You can eat better and put more nutrients in your body, but there are reasons that people don't. I mean, our food supply and the types of things you can buy at restaurants and stores now, and the denigration of the quality of food, and it's less whole food now and it's more packaged food. There are reasons for all of this. There are reasons that getting micronutrients in an IV are better. And I think people are discovering that. And it is a reaction to all the things happening in the world that, once again, denigrate our food supply, that make it harder to stay hydrated, make it harder to get out and exercise, put us in front of computers, sitting down more than we used to and not getting good sunlight and all that sort of thing. So there are reasons for all of it. And, we don't do anything that, once again, isn't medically and scientifically proven. Now, what level of that proof it's a little different for certain things, but we always say we do seminal things. And so IVs are pervasive in hospitals. There's a reason the first thing they do for you when you go to get checked into a hospital is give you an IV. Heat therapy, it's been around for hundreds of years. Cold therapy, it's been around since Hippocrates. And I could go right on down the line. Nothing we do is this newfangled, oh my gosh, we've discovered a new thing that humans didn't need 20 years ago, but they suddenly need today. I mean, I do think people today need some things that they used to get more of, but nothing we do is so newfangled that you're like, I don't get where this comes from.
For sure. And when it comes to the kind of business aspects of it, if I'm, in doing some research, looking at some of the milestones, like over 100 locations now, and you can maybe update me with the most recent numbers, but so at least over 100 locations, something like 150% growth year over year. A headline, right, that kind of came out and kind of big milestone, took on 140 million in funding. When people are coming in, and obviously the business is growing rapidly, what are they encountering from? Is it a la carte? Are they buying a subscription, a membership? You mentioned sometimes you're seeing them up to 5 times. Was it a week or a month?
Yeah, on average, we see a customer up to 5 times. We see some customers every day. We've got some customers we've literally seen 360 days a year for 5 years. So when you have certain chronic conditions, the best you can do is manage it. But once again, if you have to manage it at that level of frequency, you're hopefully doing something that's natural and not going to create long-term negative impact. So I think that's what attracts people. But, once again, we do see people more than anyone else in the health and wellness, quote unquote, system. And so we can do more for them. And so in terms of, we're at 121 stores. We open a store every 3 to 4 days now. We hope to, actually accelerate that pace next year. I want to get to a point where one day we're opening a store every day. Every human being will need us at some point. Every human being's going to get sick at some point. Every human being's going to injure themselves at some point. Every human being's going to experience pain, and every human being's going to age. And so I would say that as long as you fit one of those characteristics, there's probably a time and place for you to come into a store. So we have this really diverse customer base. The average age is 40. It's 50% men and women. There's a 25-year distribution above and below. So we have as many 15-year-olds as 65-year-olds. The only sort of place where that curve isn't steady is like 21 to 25-year-old guys, because they're really stupid for those 4 years. But they wake up and they kind of have to pay the piper for those years, so they get right back on the curve as well. And so big addressable market. Our mission is to once again be more affordable and accessible for everyone, so they can do more of what they love. And in order to fulfill that mission, we want to be within, 15 minutes of 85, 90% of the US population within the next 3 to 4 years. So that means you got to open a lot of stores. That means you got to be in every state. You got to be in big cities, small cities. Once again, Bozeman, Montana performs like Austin, Texas. And, other than food concepts, that is not something that happens very often.
When you think about now plotting that course forward, obviously the funding certainly helps as you ramp up, but opening a store as frequently as you want to and kind of in as many cities as you aspire to, what does that look like in terms of continuing to build the company, thinking about how you're deploying that capital, and ultimately, continuing to attract customers, right, as you get those new stores opened?
I'm very proud of what we've done to scale this business. I mean, we have created the ability to have this flywheel now. It was not easy. I think if you looked at many franchise systems and you looked at the number of people they have in their corporate support teams relative to the number of stores, we look different. We have more support. We have more people. And it's not even close, but it's because we have always tried to stay ahead of that curve, and we've always been building for the next phase, not the last phase. And I would also say that Steve and I are in this for the long run. We want to build a transformational generational business. We are not subject to the vagaries of we need to make X amount of dollars and have a liquidity event for our own personal interests. We're great. $100 million doesn't change my life. I'm married to the same woman. I drive the same truck. I live in the same house. I treat my kids maybe even a little harder just because I don't want them to be spoiled. But we're in a really good place, and we're trying to build this business for the long term and fundamentally transform health and wellness in this country. And so when you do that, you do have to have a plan. You do have to bring in really great systems, really great technology, really great people. This is not a Jim and Steve show anymore. We have a fully baked executive team with a bunch of badasses that are very pedigreed, that have been at some of the great companies that you can imagine, a lot of West Pointers, Ivy League, all that sort of thing. We are a super cool company with a really great mission that is a rocket ship and funded by a General Atlantic. Guess who wants to come work at a place like that? Everybody. And really talented, awesome people. So I say my superpower is pretty simple. I'm self-aware. And so I know when I'm not good at something. I know when there's a deficiency in sort of the system that we're creating. I know when we need more capital. I know when we need these things. And Steve is the exact same way. So being self-aware really helps. But there's a couple hundred people in our corporate team now, and so we have probably the most sophisticated, marketing. If you look at our sort of direct competitors, we have a a wonderful training team, an education team. We've got a construction team. We've got a real estate team. We've got basically a high performing group of people for every single aspect of this business. So then when we go out and find franchisees, it increases the likelihood of a really wonderful result. And, we accelerate how quickly they become successful and make money and all those sort of things. And that, once again, that creates a flywheel. If you have people in your system that are franchisees that are doing really well, guess what they want to do? They want to open more. And we were super picky, by the way. When we first started this, we used to say, and this was probably a little too narrow, we said, well, we want West Point and Naval Academy grads to be our franchisees. And there was a reason for that. My wife's a West Point grad. We've got a lot of that in our system. And by the way, when you do that, you have an amazing foundation. Anytime you're building a community, a business, whatever it is, if you can build a strong foundation, everything else is easier. So when you start with the highest quality sort of people in the country, i.e. military academy grads, i.e. the blue chip companies, sales executives like Stryker and J&J and Abbott, you have a really strong foundation to build on top of. Now, in addition to those two channels, we also go to the top franchise systems like Orange Theory, and we have the best of the Orange Theory franchisees that have now come into our system. And then you get some one-off, like they don't fit in any of those three buckets, but guess what? You know what good looks like now. You know how to vet people, and you're not going to make mistakes when it comes to your franchisees, if you didn't have that strong a foundation.
Yeah, it makes total sense. It's oftentimes too, when we think about hiring for what we're doing now and in the past, looking for athletes. Obviously, Anthony, my co-founder and brother, was in the military, so a lot of those same attributes around high performance definitely resonate. With that, you mentioned there, and this is something I've been thinking about as we get towards the end of the conversation. Maybe thinking about how the broader landscape continues to evolve. If we think about like fitness, wellness, healthcare, all these different aspects. Now you start to see things, right? Like stretching studios and boutiques that are starting to spin out. Do you see it maybe evolving in the direction of these things becoming bundled? We've seen, some of the boutique studios who are now entering into agreements to put their studios inside maybe a Planet Fitness. Do you see partnerships and integrations, or maybe that kind of bundling of the health and wellness, right, from what is now kind of like siloed infrastructure?
Yeah, you could use that term bundle for a few things. So do I think that a place that offers multiple services is better than a place that offers one service when it comes to health and wellness and fitness? Absolutely. Do I think that technology that addresses more than one specific thing is better than something that addresses one thing when it comes to health and wellness? Well, maybe it doesn't address that one thing as well, but you can't look at people through the lens of sort of one or two metrics when you're talking about health and wellness and longevity. It's just too complex. So for instance, I'm wearing an Oura ring. I love Oura. It's great for tracking sleep and a few other things, but it's pretty myopic about that thing. And so if you can take an Oura ring and the data from an Oura ring, and you can plug it into an ecosystem that has data coming in from lots of other places, and then you can take technology and create a really usable, digestible consumer interface that puts a little more context into these specific things, and then of course puts it in an environment where you can actually perform services that affect the data that's coming in a positive way. And then over time, you can show people, wow, look at the short-term results and how they're turning into long-term results when you're consistent about it. To me, that's what is better. And by the way, I just described Restore. We are putting tens of millions of dollars into technology. We are putting tens of millions of dollars into distribution. We are putting millions of dollars, once again, into our systems, into everything about what we do. And people ask me all the time, did you expect this to happen? And I say, absolutely. We had a plan. So once again, my partner, Steve Welch, is pretty amazing. I'm the marketing and sort of emotional part of this partnership, and Steve is the engineering, rational part of the partnership. And because the two of us work so well together, we can get twice as much done. So that's really gratifying. But we don't think of this as a franchise business. We don't think of this as something as small as that. We think of this as a technology play that has great distribution, deep relationships, and once again, it's getting better and better by the day. But it wasn't easy. Like I said, we've got a couple hundred folks on our corporate team. We've got a great franchise network. If we put our head in the sand, we'll open 700 locations in the next 4 years. So, those are already committed and moving forward. So, we look at who we're competing with today, and we know that who we're going to be competing with tomorrow is going to be different. We're going after too big a market, too big an opportunity for there not to be competitors. By the way, I love competitors. Right now, we are developing this really big category by ourselves. That's great. And we have a massive head start, and we're going to have an even bigger head start because once again, we're opening stores and adding nuance to it. But at some point, we're going to have really good competitors, really well-funded competitors, and they're going to bring a sort of a view on it that maybe we didn't see. And I think that if you look at us today and then look at us 3 years from now, partly because of what we already know we're going to do, and partly because we do think there will be some positive influences from others in this space, we're going to be talking about stuff that is so friggin' cool. My dad has stage 4 cancer. And I can tear up talking about it because I'm really close to my dad. But I do look at it like if I could have gotten hold of him 20 years earlier, I don't know that he gets cancer. Now, please, big disclaimer. I am not saying Restore keeps people from getting cancer. I'm not saying that Restore keeps people from aging or anything like that. But if we follow our path and we do the things that we hope to do over the next few years, we will be having a meaningful impact on people's health span, on their longevity, on their ability to fight off, big major health issues. And I'm going to say one final thing about the world we're living in right now. Everyone's focused on coronavirus. And so coronavirus is serious. It's particularly serious if you have a comorbidity or if you're overweight and all these sort of things. But the reality of it is, take the word coronavirus out of the sentence, plug in heart disease, plug in cancer, plug in diabetes, plug in the flu, plug in anything. The prescription's the same. And so the sooner people start proactively taking care of their health and wellness, the better they are prepared to deal with the things that they're absolutely going to run into. And if that happens to be coronavirus, great. You might still get it. You probably will still get it. If you look at the world today, everyone's getting it. So, shouldn't you be as prepared as possible? Yes. And what's the way to be prepared as possible? Be as healthy as possible. And so you can't make it about being perfectly healthy because perfection is not attainable unless you're a Tim Tebow or someone that is so focused and so incredibly disciplined. I'm not. I'm 20 pounds overweight. There's a lot of things I could do better. But I will say this, I am healthier than the typical 52-year-old. I put things in my body that are good for me. I exercise every day. I get a good night's sleep. I love my wife. I love what I do every day for work. I got great people that I'm working with that I consider my tribe. And you put all that together, and man, it's pretty easy to have a good life, and it's pretty easy to be pretty healthy.
Yeah, fired up about it too, as you're talking about it. That definitely coming across. I guess maybe one more question before we get you out of here. And as you're talking about all this, right, all of these things from just a general sense of well-being and feeling better to whatever definition of wellness, right, you want to ascribe to it, and that's kind of changing all the time. To now we start talking about health span and lifespan and longevity and immune health. Does this go the route of, because you see now a lot of subscription or membership-based primary care, and it's like this version of insurance. Do you see Restore and just this general trend being outside of healthcare, or do you see it being more ingrained in terms of like actual doctor, insurance, medical treatments? Do you think about those it evolving that direction, or you want to keep it separate?
Restore is very different. Restore is a cash-based system, and because we've made everything affordable, it's actually cheaper to come to Restore and pay cash than it is to use insurance in the traditional medical system in many cases. But having said that, there are some things that the traditional medical system does that we don't do, can't do. So I would love to see a melding of the two at some point. We are not as so arrogant to think that the traditional medical system doesn't have some positive things. By the way, I do think the traditional medical system is broken. I think there are some massive problems with it. I think it is not applied in a sort of equitable way across society. You get better medical care on the traditional side if you have money versus if you don't. So there's lots of problems. But the ultimate manifestation of what we do does need to involve some notion of some traditional stuff and what we're doing. I do think what we're doing is better. Preventative is always better. And I also think that we are going to be tackling things in the future that we don't tackle today. So there are people that believe aging is a disease. They believe it's a disease that has, 9 to 12 different components. By the way, if you can address each of those components, you can theoretically cure the disease. So people are saying you could theoretically cure aging. Do I think that's going to happen? I don't know. But I do think that you can absolutely live longer, better, more fulfilling lives doing the things that you love to do longer if you follow a particular set of things. And Restore, I think, has that set of things articulated pretty well. But even today, if you go down one path, your health span is longer. So when I hear people talking all the time about, well, we're going to see, medical stuff and wellness stuff increase health span. Well, should we already see that? If you eat healthier, if you move better, if you're attached to, something you care about, if you put the right things in your body, you will live a longer, healthier life. I don't think anyone debates that. Now, given the new scientific advancements around the human genome and what we know about aging and all the new technologies that are coming out, man, I think my kids will theoretically run marathons after they're 100. And so the key is starting earlier rather than later. I started when I've always been, into fitness and wellness, but in a hardcore way as the CEO of Restore at 46, I completely changed a lot of the things that I do. I wish I had started at 36. And so because it matters, and that kind of goes back to my comment about my dad. But my kids will be on a different trajectory because from a very early age they're going to do the things that long term will improve their health span. And I can't talk about it, but we're working on some stuff in the sort of the health span arena and the longevity space that, man, it is so cool to be working on it. Like I'm bouncing off the walls someday thinking about the things that we're putting in place. We're not ready to do certain things, but once again, if you look at us a year from now, we're going to be very different than we are today. And I will say this, and I don't want this to come across as arrogant or cocky, but I say this all the time. We are the one group of people in the wellness space that always does what we say. I hear so many times, we're going to open 100 locations, we're going to do this and that. And people don't do it. Number one, because it's friggin' hard as hell. It is hard. Medicine in this country, it's 50 different states, all kinds of different regulations. Doing anything national is hard. But we have done what we say we're going to do. We can go back 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 6 years, and you can look at what did we say we were going to do at the beginning of the year and where did we end up? We have shown an amazing ability to predict what we're going to do, put things in place, and then actually deliver it. So when I say a year from now, let's get back together and let's talk about, where we are, I can assure you that we will be in an entirely different place with lots of cool things that you don't see at a Restore location today.
Certainly a lot to look forward to and big plans ahead. We'll put that on the calendar, right? We'll have to circle back a year from now and see where things have landed. But maybe that's a good place to wrap up. Obviously, you talking about it today and the folks who are interested, want to follow along, maybe want to give it a try or just want to learn more. You talk about continuing to open locations and expand the team. Where would you point them? Where's the best place to learn more about Restore?
Restore.com is the best place to see where we're opening. There is a Restore coming to every place in America. You're in Pittsburgh. We have multiple locations in Pittsburgh. really, really lovely locations.
Jim, I appreciate you taking a few minutes to chat with us today. Very excited to share the conversation, and yeah, we'll be following along as you continue to ramp this thing up.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here. And like I said, I get excited talking about this and love having the opportunity to have a forum like this. So congrats on all your success, and thank you very much.